While helping ants fight, I accidentally discovered the entrance to a miniature world. An egg I casually dropped fed 50 people from the entire village for 3 days. As a result, the people here worship me as a god, and I send them food every day. Until I accidentally rescued a mother and her daughter. That was when I discovered this miniature world was actually the world of the Min dynasty. It all started because I found a sandbox inside an anthill and, excited, I brought it home. I discovered there were little people the size of dust particles inside. At that moment, a young woman was holding a bamboo basket. She was gathering grass and tree bark from the sandy ground, occasionally finding wild green leaves. Men holding rusted swords ran toward the village shouting, "Listen up, people. Hand over all the food in your houses to me right now. Otherwise, I will kill every single one of you with a single blow." Immediately after, the door to the young woman's house was kicked open. She and her mother were dragged out, and the two began to cry and scream, great king, please, forgive us. We truly have nothing left to eat. Look, our family is eating grassroots." The bandits didn't care about any of that. The leader looked at the girl viciously. "I don't care if you eat grassroots or tree bark. If you don't hand over the food, I'll cut you down with one strike." Hearing this, the young woman burst into loud sobs. Her mother rushed to hug the girl and begged for her life, but the bandit slashed her throat with a single blow. Red liquid sprayed in the distance. Then he brandished his sword again and swung it toward the young woman. Seeing this, I really couldn't hold back. I opened the lid of the model box, reached my hand inside, and flicked my finger. At that same moment, in the village of Gao within the Min dynasty, a giant hand suddenly reached down from the clouds in the sky. The young woman, Elena, felt something blocking the sunlight. She looked up, her face covered in tears, and saw a giant hand reaching rapidly toward her. A finger flicked right over her head, and then the bandit swinging his sword was sent flying right past Elena. He soared through the sky to the sandy ground outside the village, landing with a dull thud. His bones were completely shattered upon impact. The faint sound of wind and thunder still echoed in the sky. Damn bandits. Then, the hand retreated into the clouds and vanished. In that moment, Elena even forgot to cry, staring up at the sky in a daze. Seeing their comrades suddenly sent flying, the other bandits gathered around, glaring fiercely at Elena. "Girl, what did you just do?" Elena hugged her mother's body. She shook her head with a look of total confusion. "If you don't talk, I have plenty of ways to make you speak." The bandit leader stepped forward and raised his rusted sword to cut her down. But a second later, the leader screamed and vanished instantly. The remaining bandits were shocked and began roaring at Elena in a fit of rage, but she didn't say a word. Only then did Elena realize that she was the only one who could see the giant hand. She looked up at the clouds and saw a man's face floating vaguely in the opening of the sky. It was as if a god were watching the world. So she left her mother's body and knelt toward the heavens. "Heavenly God, save us." Thunder rolled. It seemed like something was falling from the sky, and the bandits fled in terror, but only for a moment. A massive palm dropped from the sky and crushed every single bandit into the dirt. And then, the diorama box fell silent for a while. The doors of all the dilapidated houses in the village slowly creaked open. The villagers emerged from their homes and gathered around the bandits I had just flattened. They whispered to one another while constantly glancing up at the sky in awe. A few people surrounded the young villager, Elena, asking her questions. Their voices sounded like the buzzing of mosquitoes. I couldn't hear them clearly unless they shouted. Soon, the villagers were busy stripping the bandits of their weapons and clothes. Each family sat by their door and then stood. Every family received a weapon, and then they dug a pit outside the village to bury the bodies. They also cut pieces of wood to make tombstones for their fallen fellow villagers. But it seemed that no one in the village knew how to read or write. Not a single word was written on any of the tombstones. They only carved a few crooked marks with a knife to identify which family each grave belonged to. The young villager knelt before one of the graves, bowing her head repeatedly with tears in her eyes, and I watched in silence for a long time. I didn't go to rest until nightfall, and after waking up the next day, I cooked 2 eggs. I went over to the diorama box, and the villagers had already begun their work. The young villager, Elena, was already carrying a bamboo basket. She was searching for grass roots in the sandy soil outside the village. She lost her mother yesterday. She shouldn't have recovered from the grief yet, but she already had to dedicate herself to finding food. Elena had been searching the sandy land for half a day, and her hands and feet were growing weaker and weaker. Her body was also trembling slightly. I didn't know how long she could hold on before starving, but she had to find food. I knew that day was drawing closer and closer. At that moment, a sigh echoed from the sky. This girl is suffering so much. Hearing the voice, Elena snapped her head up and saw a young man's face emerging from the clouds. She knew she was saved. She bowed piously once more. Heavenly God, I am so hungry. I can't take it anymore. Please, have mercy and save me. Elena was like a helpless little animal, waiting in silence for the grace of the Heavenly God. But after waiting for a while, nothing happened. When she lifted her head, she discovered that the man's face in the clouds had vanished without a trace. Is the great God unwilling to help me? Perhaps yesterday, he only helped me to kill those unforgivable bandits. Maybe the great God only acted on a whim. If the great God always answered every request, How could there be so much suffering in the world? Thinking about it, I've never offered anything to the great god. Why should he help me? Clenching my teeth, I'll just keep searching for grassroots. On the other side, I got up from beside the diorama box and walked into the kitchen. The fire was burning in the stove, and the water in the pot was boiling. The 2 eggs I had just tossed into the water were almost cooked now. I grabbed an egg with one hand and approached the diorama box. The little maiden in the box was still diligently searching the sandy ground. My own little maiden. Girl, I'm going to try and give you something to eat. The little maiden stiffened and lifted her head to look at the sky, her eyes wide with surprise. As the clouds parted, a giant hand reached down and placed a massive egg. The little maiden froze in place. As the egg was set on the sand wall in front of her, Elena opened her mouth in awe, staring ahead. It looked like an egg from some ancient, giant beast. Terrified, she took a few steps back. Is this an egg? Elena asked in disbelief. Yes, an egg. For me to eat. This is for you to eat. I've already boiled it. You can eat it right away. Elena, hearing the kind words of the great god, finally summoned her courage. She approached the egg and tapped on its shell. The shell made a dull thudding sound. It was like hitting a giant boulder. She picked up a rock and used all her strength to strike the eggshell. Crack! The rock broke. The eggshell remained completely unharmed. Seeing the eggshell was harder than stone, I smiled awkwardly. I said softly, I'll help you peel it. After removing the shell, I placed it in front of the little maiden. The maiden's eyes widened in shock. This really was a boiled egg. It was just massive, over 3 feet long. Elena suddenly lunged toward it. She took a bite of the snow-white boiled egg. Delicious, so tasty. This is the kind of luxury only the young masters of the landowners get to eat. But now there's one this big. I'm going to eat until I'm full. Elena took several bites of the egg. Leaving a large hole, she nibbled through the white to reveal the yolk. She stuck her whole head inside, taking huge bites of the yolk, making sounds of pure satisfaction with her mouth. She ate happily, and I felt happy too. Finally, I could help this poor girl. But was this egg I gave her too big? She won't be able to finish it. It's July now. If we leave it overnight, the egg will spoil and become inedible. Just as I thought this, Elena knelt and bowed. Thank you so much, great heavenly god. Now that she was full, she had strength. She took off running toward the village. In no time, all 42 inhabitants of the village gathered around the enormous boiled egg. Standing before it was like standing before a giant boulder. If not for the hole showing the yolk, they wouldn't have dared approach. The village chief, George, stood at the front, his face full of doubt. Elena, you said this massive boiled egg was granted by the great heavenly god. Elena nodded and pointed to the sky. It's the same great heavenly god from yesterday who helped us kill the bandits. The people of the village looked at each other. Yesterday's scene was still fresh in their minds. That group of evil bandits had been crushed into mincemeat by an invisible pressure. Blood splashed everywhere. The scene was far too shocking. Afterward, only Elena said she had seen him. She saw a heavenly god reach a hand down from the clouds and kill the bandits with a single strike. But no one else believed her words at the time. The villagers didn't know what to think. Unexpectedly, after only one day, Elena had found an egg this massive and claimed it was a gift from the great heavenly god. Staring at the egg, which was as big as a house, the village chief sighed. An egg this large could only be created by a great heavenly god. Even if an egg this size existed somewhere in the world, there wouldn't be a pot big enough to cook it. Everyone nodded in agreement. Elena, it seems the great heavenly god favors you. He only reveals himself to you. The rest of us aren't worthy to see him. Elena was surprised. The god favors me. The chief nodded. Did he give any other instructions? Elena spoke up quickly, saying he told her to call the villagers so they could eat. The village chief reached out and pointed to the egg in front of him. Since it's a gift from the god to us, let's eat. But no greedy stealing. Everyone gets one large piece to take home. I'm not sure what we'll do with the rest. Soon, the chief finished the basic distribution. As for the massive amount left over, the villagers couldn't move at all and didn't know what to do. I thought about the food in the village. If it spoiled, it would be bad. I simply reached into the box, picked up the remaining egg pieces, and tossed them into my own trash can. The villagers watched as the remaining egg pieces flew back up into the sky. They were so terrified they nearly fainted. After recovering, they knelt on the ground, worshipping the sky and thanking the god for his gift. Soon, the village of Oakvale returned to a state of calm. The little ones began searching for food once again. Even though they just had a full meal, boiled eggs don't keep well. They'll start worrying about their survival again tomorrow. I sit outside Oakvale Village, silently watching the little people's every move. My heart is full of mixed feelings. It's no joy. One egg isn't enough for them. Should I give them an egg every day? Eating only eggs will cause malnutrition, won't it? I also need to give them rice and vegetables. Occasionally, there should be meat and salt. Humans can't live without salt. These little ones are human too, right? Thinking about it this way, things are starting to get complicated. I'm afraid I'm basically raising a box of hamsters. Based on the amount of food these 42 little people eat, I'll have to spend at least a few dollars a month to raise them. I can afford that. Forget it, I'll just do it. I open Google to search how to raise little people from a tiny country. I can't find any real answers online. Then I open the military and history forum I usually visit. I post anonymously. If you had a group of tiny people, what would you do? One user replies, I'd take her out and lift her skirt every day. You're too much. Another says, I could spy on her bathing every day. I was speechless. Damn it, what a bunch of idiots. There's no point reasoning with these useless guys. It seems I'll have to figure this out on my own and start learning how to care for these tiny beings from scratch. I took a look at the diorama to make sure. The little ones didn't need immediate care. Then I ran out the door. I rushed at full speed to the nearest supermarket. I grabbed a sack of rice and 2 cuts of pork, along with a bag of vegetables. I bought a large pack of salt, spending over 100 yuan. Returning home, I found the house of the young villager, Sarah, and cupped my hand like a megaphone. I aimed at her window and slowly, very slowly, poured a handful of rice into her house until it filled half the room. Then I clapped my hands and waited happily for her to return home. She'll be so happy to see all that rice, won't she? On the other side, the county magistrate sat in his hall, flipping through the account books handed over by the clerk, frowning with a look of disgust. Are the back taxes from the villages still not collected? The higher-ups are putting on a lot of pressure. The clerk hurried to show a flattering smile. Your Honor, there is a great drought in the region. The land is dry for thousands of miles. The people have no means to live. Those peasants truly have no grain in their hands. No matter how much you pressure them, you can't collect it. You call this helplessness? They have no grain. Those rogues have plenty of grain in their hands. It's just that they've hidden it and aren't willing to hand it over to pay rent, the clerk said uncomfortably. Drought? The year before there was a drought. Last year there was a drought too. How is it that grain could always be collected before? But in this year of drought it can't be? The first year of drought, everyone has grain reserves. The second year of drought, they can also barely pay the taxes. But if the third year continues with drought, where will they get money or grain to pay? That means bad things come in threes. Marcus looked sideways. What? Are you even defending those rogues? How much have they bribed you? Do you dare whisper such nonsense into my ears? The clerk was startled. I report to Your Honor. I haven't received any benefit from them. They can't even survive. Where would they get money to bribe me? I truly have no choice but to say a word for them. You call this a fit of conscience? Marcus snorted, ignoring the clerk. They refuse to pay taxes with respect. When dealing with this kind of rogue, you have to be ruthless and beat them to death. The bailiffs lunged forward. The clerk was horrified. Your Excellency, the county magistrate, you must not do this. The people are already suffering so much. If you pressure them like this, I fear they will turn good people into rebels. This is what they call forcing the people into rebellion. Get out. I bought this madman a long time ago. Ethan returned to the village with a weary body. But just as he reached his front door, he unlocked it, and with a crash, the door swung open. A massive amount of oval white rice, over half a meter in diameter, rolled toward him. He stood stunned, staring foolishly. Rice? Why is the rice so big? Just as he was lost and confused about what was happening, he saw that in the sky above his head, the face of the great heavenly god appeared faintly. That face wore a smile, like a great deity. Before long, the 42 villagers gathered again in front of Ethan's house. They all stared at the enormous white rice, as large as an ink plate, lost in confusion. Everyone was in a state of temporary shock. After a while, the village chief spoke up. This is also a grace from the great heavenly god, isn't it? There is no rice this big in the world. Ethan nodded. The great heavenly god played a little joke on me. He purposely filled my house with white rice and flooded me when I opened the door. The village chief said, I hope he plays jokes like that on us every day. Thomas hugged a grain of rice and smiled foolishly. How do we divide this rice? 10 grains for each family. The chief shouted furiously. Assistant, put it back. We still don't know if this rice is only for Ethan or for all of us. If it is only for Ethan, and you take it randomly and irritate the great heavenly god, do you want to be crushed like a mountain bandit? Thomas was terrified. He let go, and the rice fell to the ground. The village chief turned to Ethan. He said kindly, Ethan, you are a good boy. Since the great heavenly god chose to appear only to you, then we can only ask you to speak with the great heavenly god. Please, ask him if we can share your blessing and use some of this rice. Just then, a haughty voice rang out from the village entrance. Despicable peasants of Gao village. Come out, come out. Stop hiding in your houses pretending to be dead. When are you going to pay the taxes you owe the imperial court? As soon as that voice sounded, every villager's face turned dark with dread. Even the little children covered their mouths in fear, not daring to cry. From above, I whispered, Damn, the county bailiffs are here. The village chief immediately said, Ethan, Thomas, and you other young men, get to work and carry all this rice into Ethan's house. As for me, I'm going to the gate. I will go to the village entrance to deal with the bailiffs. Everyone remember, do not let them see the rice in this house. On the other side, standing by the display box, I suddenly discovered 5 more tiny officials had appeared inside the box. I instantly saw that these 5 new little officials seemed to be arguing with the little villagers. I quickly pressed my ear close and heard one little official shouting, You've owed taxes for a long time. Taking them? Are you trying to rebel? Another official paced back and forth with an iron ruler. If you don't pay your taxes, I will arrest you and throw you in jail. The village chief approached, smiling submissively. Officer, sir, it's not that we don't want to pay. It's that we have no money or food. We are all starving. Look at this weather. Not a drop of rain has fallen in months. All the crops in the fields have died. The little official sneered. A drought is no excuse. The government's tax grain must be delivered in full, no matter what. Otherwise, it is rebellion. The village chief looked bitter. Officer, sir, look at the people in our village. They are all malnourished. A gust of wind could knock them over. They don't look like they have money. Everyone is dying of hunger. There really is no way for us to pay the taxes. Damn it, I'm going to search the village right now. If I find you hiding grain and not paying, you'll rot in jail. He shoved the little village chief and strutted into the village. This scene made my blood boil. It was a classic case of corrupt officials oppressing good people. A mysterious, unusual feeling washed over me. I fear this box isn't as simple as I thought. Very soon, the 5 tiny officials began searching the village. The village chief's expression tightened with tension. Ordinary people don't usually fear their houses being searched. After all, the truth is they have almost no food left anyway. But Ethan's house is half full of giant white rice. If the tax collectors find it, we're finished. The collectors noticed immediately. The villagers were all focused on one ruined house, as if hiding something. All the young men of the village were standing right in front of that ruined house. 2 of them even held the door shut with their backs. The collectors' attention was instantly fixed. They locked onto that ruined house like hawks. One tax collector marched straight toward Ethan's house. The villagers grew incredibly nervous. Everyone's face changed as the village chief slumped down. The chief instinctively stepped in front of the official. "Get out of the way," the collector barked, pushing hard. The chief stumbled and fell aside. The collectors rushed the house, shouting at the young men to move. The collector kicked them aside. The wooden door was damp and weak, unable to withstand the pressure. The lead collector shoved his way in. The village chief sat there, defeated. The wooden door gave way. The rice from inside the village house came spilling out. All 4 tax collectors froze in absolute shock. The scene fell into an eerie silence. After several seconds, I watched them react. One collector stammered, "Is the village of Gaojia hiding something like this? Is it rice? Why is it so big?" The village chief took a risk and told him not to worry about it. The 5 collectors looked at each other, unsure whether to believe him. The scene stalled for several seconds. No one spoke. I watched in silence, wondering if I should intervene. If I want to protect my 42 little people, I should reach in and kill these 5 officials right now, just like the bandits. But is that appropriate? Where did these 5 collectors come from? How did they even get inside the box? Will others enter the box in the future? There's so much I don't understand. Blindly intervening might not be the best move. I thought for a moment and took a photo with my phone. Then, I hovered my hand over the box. If my little people were in danger, I was ready to reach in. I'd wipe out these 5 outsiders like I did the bandits. On the other hand, seeing the massive hand appearing vaguely in the sky, the chief panicked. He knew what death meant, and he hoped the god would stay his hand. Yesterday, he witnessed how the heavenly god crushed all the bandits into pulp with a single slap. That terrifying, satisfying image still haunts him. The chief quickly looked up and screamed toward the sky. "No, heavenly god, I beg of you. Don't kill them. They are officials. If you kill them, our entire village is finished." The villagers stood there, stunned. The 5 officials were also stunned. They looked at the sky, thinking to themselves, what does this mean? This villager is screaming at the clouds. "Don't kill us. What's in the sky that could kill us? We can't see anything. There's nothing there." But they weren't fools. They immediately remembered what the village chief had said a moment ago, but in the next second, the lead official let out a mocking chuckle and cursed. "What nonsense." Another official joined in. "You actually gave me a scare. I really thought something was coming to kill me. But no. Do you think I scare easily?" An official shouted at Sarah. "What kind of garbage are you screaming, woman? Threatening officials is opposing the imperial court. Do you want to die? I'm not threatening you. I'm saving you. Leave now. The heavenly god has already raised his hand. You have enraged him. If you keep this up, he'll crush you all with a single slap." The lead official shouted, "Seize that trickster woman. Take her to the county seat to interrogate her slowly. It's possible she's a heretic from the White Lotus sect." One official brandished an iron ruler in his hand and walked slowly toward Sarah. Sarah glanced at the approaching official and then looked up. The clouds parted. The heavenly god's hand was moving rapidly downward. Soon, it hovered directly over the official's head. It was obvious the heavenly god was protecting her. If this official attacked her, the heavenly god would crush him with a slap, turning the lead official's situation into a massacre. But officials aren't like bandits. Killing bandits doesn't matter, but this would mark everyone as rebels. With the army coming to suppress us, everyone would die without even a place to be buried. Sarah ignored the approaching officer, lifted her head toward the sky, and kept screaming, "I beg of you." No, I heard the young woman's plea, and I immediately understood the situation. Behind these 5 low-ranking officials, there are even more officials waiting. Their identity represents the power standing behind them. This diorama box isn't as simple as what my friends see. This time, I'll do exactly what the young woman expects. I pulled back the hand I originally planned to use to crush the officials. Instead, I extended just 2 fingers and gently pinched the officer. The official screamed like a pig being slaughtered. He felt a massive force seizing his shoulder, squeezing until every bone in his body creaked, nearly crumbling. He looked left and right, trying to see what held him, but there was nothing. He only felt an invisible force. The other 4 officials looked up together and froze in the street, watching their comrades struggling in midair. Their faces were masks of pure shock. The villagers saw this scene and knelt as one. The great god has manifested. The official who was caught and hoisted into the air was so terrified that tears and snot ran down his face, and he had even wet his pants. He flailed his hands and feet in the air, screaming with all his might. Great God, have mercy. Great God, have mercy. This lowly one didn't mean to offend. I was wrong. Have mercy. The other 4 officials stood frozen, looking at each other, not knowing what to do. Right then, I puffed out my cheeks and blew a breath of air at the other 4 officials. A sudden gust of wind kicked up instantly. A blast of wind surged toward the 4 of them, hitting no one else but those 4. The officials were swept away by this terrible wind, flying backward together for 3 or 4 meters before slamming heavily onto the ground. Their backsides nearly split in half from the impact. The 4 of them finally realized exactly what they needed to do. They scrambled to their feet and then dropped straight to their knees, hitting the yellow sand with a heavy thud as they slammed their foreheads down. Tell them to leave and keep quiet about what just happened, Grace said loudly. The great God commands you to leave and warns you, do not speak of today. The 4 nodded frantically. We will obey the great God's instructions. They got up and bolted. The official still suspended in midair wailed. This lowly one wants to leave too. Great God, have mercy, I beg of you. Let this lowly one leave as well. This lowly one won't say a single word about this. I loosened my grip, my gaze fixed on the 5 tax collectors. I want to see exactly how these 5 scoundrels crawl out of Goldcrest Village. I watched them stumble and flee the village in a pathetic state. They soon reached the edge of Goldcrest Village. The 5 of them walked forward, as if they couldn't even see the glass wall. They passed right through the glass and simply vanished without a trace, as if the glass wall were a portal to another world. I personally witnessed the entry and exit of these tiny outsiders from Goldcrest Village. I couldn't help but fall into deep thought. I need to re-examine my Goldcrest Village. Maybe it's not just for raising these 42 little people, but it connects to the world of another tiny country. I thought I was just keeping a small box of little people. I figured I'd raise them casually, like I was keeping a box of hamsters. I never thought to investigate these little people thoroughly. What exactly is the situation? But if I'm looking down at another world of tiny people, there are many things worth investigating. I turned my gaze back to the villagers. By now, the tiny tax collectors had already fled. The villagers, the little people, gathered together, cheering and bowing toward the sky. The young girl, as the only person who can speak with the great sky god, was surrounded by the villagers, the little people. They spoke to her hurriedly. Then the young girl raised her head and shouted to the sky, "Great sky god, thank you for your help. Everyone also wants to ask you, are these delicacies a reward for me alone? Are the other villagers allowed to enjoy them?" My gaze fixed on the young girl, Grace. This young girl can communicate with me. She can hear me speak. I can use her to understand the world of this tiny country. It seems it's time to say a few words to her. I'm going to speak, share everything with them. Also, I have some questions I want to ask you. Grace was overjoyed. Villagers, the great sky god says these delicacies are a reward for all of us. Everyone can share. The little villagers cheered suddenly. God bless the great sky god. Long live the great sky god. Everyone be quiet. I'm going to ask questions. Grace shouted hurriedly. Everyone shut up. The great sky god still has some questions to ask me. As soon as she shouted this, everyone went silent instantly. What planet or continent are you on? Grace didn't understand. She repeated the phrase word for word, and she told it to all the villagers, the little people. But none of the little men present understood, not even the village chief, the wisest among them. What is a planet? Their faces gave it away. They had no idea about those terms. I see. Although they share the same culture, their level of knowledge has been stuck hundreds of years in the past. What country are you in? What year is it? The little men, if they had any slight idea of what a country was, knew they were inside one. This country also has an imperial court and an army. But what is this country called? What era are we in? They didn't know at all. They shook their heads in unison. I frowned. These guys don't even know what country they're from, or what year it is. This is next-level illiteracy. But thinking about it, it makes sense. Ancient peasants were illiterate. They never left their village. The farthest they went was the nearby town. They knew nothing of the outside world. The village chief sighed. Forget it. I'm not going to get anything out of you. The villagers looked at each other. Gary took the lead and spoke to his neighbors. It seems the great sky god is very disappointed. The village chief said helplessly, "We can't answer his questions." Of course he's disappointed. What can we do? The village chief thought seriously and said, "Tell the great sky god to give us some time to think of a solution and find someone educated." Someone educated. There's no one educated in the village, the chief said. But there are in town. I've seen the most learned person. Of course, it's the district magistrate. Gary was about to shake his head. The magistrate? How are we going to get him to come? The chief asked. Then let's invite the magistrate's secretary. Gary shook his head at him. We can't invite the secretary either. The village chief smiled. The secretary is also an important person, but he's not like the district magistrate, who always has officers at his service. It's easier to invite him. Then the chief turned and looked at a nearby young man. Gary stepped forward and smiled foolishly. The chief ordered, "Tomorrow morning early, take some young men from the village with you. Eat plenty of white rice. Fill your stomachs well, so you have the strength to go to town. Bring Counselor Miller back to Miller Village. If he's willing to come, invite him with respect. If he's not willing to come, knock him unconscious with one blow and drag him back here. Remember, our lives were given to us by the great sky god. What the great sky god gave to us, we must deliver it to his venerable hand. We cannot disappoint him." Gary opened his mouth wide. How delicious, how delicious. The great sky god rewarded me with a giant egg. He also rewarded me with white rice. I will listen to his words after making the arrangements. The village chief waved his large hand. Distribute the rice. Let everyone eat until they are full. 42 small villagers stood in line in front of Gary's house to receive their rice distribution. Each one received a wooden bowl full of white rice. This is what makes rice such a great food. This is enough to feed a family for many days. After the other 41 villagers received their share, there was still a large pile left in Gary's house. I suspect there are still several portions left, but no one dares to say that Gary received too much. In the minds of these uneducated and superstitious villagers, Gary's current status is equivalent to a saint in other religions. A saint is, of course, sacred and inviolable. Every household began boiling water to cook the rice. A wooden bowl full of white rice can't be cooked all at once in one house. You have to crush the rice first. Cooking a dozen fragments is enough to fill the entire family. But eating until full-on pure white rice is far too luxurious. They only cooked half the amount needed to be full. They mixed in wild vegetables, tree bark, and grass roots. That way, one meal of white rice becomes two. I used a magnifying glass through the window to see that scrambled mess they were cooking in the pot. I couldn't help but shake my head. I already gave them food. What on earth are they cooking? How can their bodies stay healthy eating like that? Fine, they're being too frugal. I'd better add something else for them. I was about to put a piece of pork in the diorama, but I stopped. Giving starving people heavy food all at once will likely upset their stomachs and give them diarrhea. With their weak bodies, diarrhea could kill them. But I can't just give them medicine. I need to give them a treat. The villagers finished cooking their dinner. They no longer have to hide from their neighbors to eat. After all, everyone is eating the same thing. The atmosphere has returned to how it was before the disaster. The village is much more lively now. It's been so long since we've eaten rice this good. The village chief ate in front of his house. This divine rice is incredibly fragrant, much more fragrant than the rice we used to grow ourselves. No wonder it's a gift from the great god. Arthur, holding a large bowl, struggles to serve the rice. He's young and big-boned. He eats more than the others, while an entire family shares only about 10 pieces of broken rice. He devours his portion alone. He eats like he hasn't seen food in lifetimes. His gluttony is scary. Gary sits dazed on the threshold, chewing slowly, taking forever with one bite. It's a shame he can't enjoy it more. After dinner, the sky gradually darkened. The little villagers returned to their tiny houses to rest. I pulled my attention away from the landscape box, stretched lazily, and turned on my phone. Then I opened the military history forum that I usually visit and posted the photo anonymously. Please, take a look at this photo. This place is called High Village. The girl inside is named Grace. The young man is named Arthur. And there are 5 officials. What do you think when you see this photo? The attire of these officials looks like servants from the Ming dynasty. Grace and Arthur also sound like names from that era. That's right. I also realized immediately that this should be the Ming dynasty. It's a shame you can't see the specific year. This landscape box is very well made. The little people are realistic, faithfully restoring the scene of Ming dynasty servants oppressing good people. These answers surprise me more and more. I'm at Fushi Park, July 13th, 2023, in the city, 7 in the morning. The temperature has already risen to 33 degrees. If noon arrives, won't the sun be lethal? I get out of bed dazed. The first thing I see is the landscape box by the bed. This box was at the door at first, then I moved it to the living room. Last night, before sleeping, I moved it next to the bed and the computer to see it first thing. It seems there are no problems in the box. The little people have gotten out of bed. They are eating breakfast, eating a lot. Today they are going to the county town to hire an advisor, so they must eat well to be able to work. The village chief stands next to them, watching them closely. As for the other villagers, they are carrying bamboo baskets, preparing to go out and look for wild vegetables. I can't help but worry about them too. These little people only look for wild vegetables. They look for tree bark. They look for grass roots every day. Isn't there even a small change? Fine, I get it. They've done everything possible to survive. They have no time to think of anything else. Let's start today's feeding. As long as I give them food every day, the little people's anxiety about survival will naturally resolve itself. Then they'll have time to think about other things. I opened the refrigerator and tore off a leaf from the Chinese cabbage I bought yesterday. The cabbage leaf is quite large, at least 40 centimeters long. I returned to the landscape box and gently placed it in front of Grace. At that moment, Grace was carrying a bamboo basket, preparing to leave the village to look for wild vegetables. Suddenly, a giant hand reached down from the sky, placing an enormous cabbage leaf in front of her. Grace looked at the cabbage leaf. It's 30 centimeters long and 10 centimeters wide. A giant cabbage leaf fell from the sky. Grace was startled at first, but she quickly stabilized her emotions. It wasn't the first time the god of heaven had fed her. It wasn't like the first time with the giant egg when she was terrified. Beyond the joy, she first knelt down. She bowed her head toward the sky, loudly thanking the grace of the heavenly god. Then she stood up. She shouted at the top of her lungs, "Everyone come quickly. The heavenly god has given us food again." The villagers, who were originally carrying bamboo baskets and preparing to go find food, suddenly gathered around. The massive cabbage leaf left them stunned for a moment, but after being baptized by the great egg and the giant white rice, they were only stunned for a short time. Then, the village chief gave an order, and everyone began to divide the large cabbage leaf. One piece for each family. Give some pieces to Arthur and the children who went to the county. Set them aside. The village chief ordered loudly. The villagers lined up obediently for the distribution. Each person cut a good piece of cabbage leaf to take home. Just as I predicted, giving food early in the morning changed everything. The villagers are no longer in a hurry to dig up wild vegetables. When people are hungry, they only have one worry. That is eating. But after the problem of food and clothing is solved, countless other concerns arise. The villagers immediately began to show a diverse and colorful way of life. Keep digging. Your pants have been torn for days. Come here, your mother will sew them for you. I discovered a middle-aged woman in the village who was very good at sewing. I don't have advanced tools, but I brought a piece of yellow clay. Teach me how to turn this into a pot. I watched two middle-aged men playing with clay. It turned out one of them knew how to make ceramic pots. It was an incredible skill. In no time, he turned a piece of yellow clay into a very beautiful pot. The other man clumsily imitated him, even kneading together a crooked pot. Shifting my gaze to another part of the village, I saw the village chief also has talent. He carved bamboo strips and quickly wove 2 baskets. Then I spotted a blacksmith named George. He was helping his neighbor forge a machete. Clink, clink, for a while. He hammered away. The machete is finished, looking brand new. This is it. There were so many more things to see in the observation box now, and I watched with delight. Wait, hold on. It looks like there's an incredible plot unfolding. I suddenly noticed George was drawing water. He carried it back to his house and poured it into a large wooden tub. Then he closed the door and shut the window. It suddenly dawned on me. Isn't this what those bored netizens on the forum always talk about? It's actually going to happen. A young woman used that bucket of water to wash her body. My heart, I don't know why, started pounding. I looked at the microscope in my hand, then at George's ruined house. The house has holes everywhere, especially in the roof. Probably due to the 3-year drought, since it hasn't rained much. No one cares if the roof leaks or not to the naked eye. There is a hole through which you can see the interior. If I point the microscope toward that hole, I can see everything. I started to hesitate. I should be a good person, just as I was in conflict. Suddenly, I realized a face appeared in the hole. It was Sarah. She was stacking tables and stools. She piled them high and climbed up until she could reach the hole in the roof, looking up at the sky. I looked down into the hole from the sky. Then, our eyes met for a brief moment. A strange atmosphere hung between us for several seconds. Sarah was the first to look away. She didn't dare look the heavenly God in the eye. She was all alone. Her dirty little face stung as it turned bright red immediately. It was so red that even the grime on her face couldn't hide it. But she was just too small. Her entire body was less than a centimeter tall. I couldn't see her expression without a magnifying glass, much less the faint blush on her face. Sarah suddenly pushed the door open and ran out. She rushed quickly to the village chief's side. She lowered her voice to a volume she thought the heavenly God couldn't hear and whispered, "Grandpa Chief, I have something to ask you." The chief replied, "What is it?" Sarah's face was as red as pig's liver, a deep, brownish crimson. "The heavenly God seems to be watching me from the sky all the time. Chief, this is your blessing. The heavenly God favors you. He uses your hand to give us food and your mouth to deliver his decrees. You should be grateful." "Why do you have that strange look, Sarah?" "Because he's watching me every second. How am I supposed to change my clothes or shower in the future?" The village chief scoffed. "TCH, so it was just some nonsense like that. You don't even think about who gave you your life. What do clothes or showering matter? The day the heavenly God needs you to serve him, you should obey him submissively." At this time, there were many strange beliefs among the people. Some sects required women to serve the gods. It was common. Of course, it wasn't only women. These women who serve with their bodies are monks who speak for the gods. They're just charlatans. P.S. Don't be so quick to mock the ancients. This kind of thing still happens in modern times. Sarah heard the village chief's words, and her heart skipped a beat. So that's how it is. The heavenly God saved my life and helped me move forward. Do I need to serve him? The god's young, handsome face flashed in her mind. She immediately shook it off. Ugh, what am I thinking? Arriving home, she looked at the hole in the roof. She discarded the idea of covering it up. Like the village chief said, let the heavenly God watch if he wants to. My life belongs to him. What else could I possibly hide? With a trembling hand, she took off her clothes. Her dirty body was exposed. She hadn't bathed in a long time, and the yellow sand remained. It had caked onto her skin. Due to chronic malnutrition, she was just skin and bones. Her body wasn't attractive at all. She mocked herself. A dirty, thin body before the heavenly God. He wouldn't even deign to look at it. What am I hiding from? I wrung the cloth into the bucket of water and then began to clean myself carefully. I didn't know he wasn't watching. At this moment, Marcus had already removed the magnifying glass. If the girl hadn't discovered me at first, I might have become a voyeur, but I was caught. So, I went back into the house. Besides, no one with common sense would have the nerve to look a second time. I shifted my gaze toward the edge of the miniature scene. In my heart, I wondered, how are those little men doing? The ones who went to the county seat to find the advisor? Once they left the scene's boundaries, I couldn't see them anymore. I couldn't protect them. What if they died out there? The year 1627 AD, 7th year of the Tianqi era, Qinshan County, Shaanxi. George led 3 young men from the Miller family through the city gates. The four were Hicks who had never left the village. The trip was over 15 kilometers. They relied entirely on asking for directions. They got lost several times and had to keep asking. By the time they entered the gates of the county seat, the sun was already at its highest point. Noon, the hottest hour. The outside temperature reached 104 degrees. The four young men were panting like dogs, heads down, dejected, and exhausted. Their entire bodies felt light and weak. Fifth brother, to find the advisor, do we have to go to the county office? I'm terrified of that place. I heard that before. The magistrate ate people alive. Those servants eat people too. It's terrifying. The three young men were paralyzed with fear. George looked at them. He was just a country bumpkin who had never traveled more than 5 kilometers in his life. The first time they stepped into the county seat, they were already intimidated by the large mansions and courtyards. They were terrified. Every one of them was trembling. He reached out to touch the bag of dry rations he carried with him, squeezing the broken rice pieces inside the bag. This was what the village chief gave them before they left, for any emergency. Each person had 5 pieces of broken rice. Touching them calmed him. What are we afraid of? We have the heavenly God backing us up. Upon hearing the words, heavenly God, their spirits lifted and their courage returned. The four of them spoke politely and followed the directions given by passers-by. Finally, they arrived at the gates of the county office. Right as they reached the gates, they saw a jarring scene. A middle-aged man, pale-faced and beardless with a slightly plump figure, wearing a long robe, was wailing loudly in front of the county office. Your Honor, the magistrate, I beg you, do not dismiss this humble servant. This humble servant has always done his best for you, even unto death. How can you say you no longer want me? This is what they call killing the dog after the hunt is over. As he said those words, his tone intensified with an exaggerated, foolish look. The official guarding the county office door shook his head and said, Mr. 3, you'd better stop crying here. His Honor the magistrate said he doesn't want you, and that's that. It's no use screaming here. Be careful not to anger the magistrate or you'll be thrown in jail. George's eyes lit up. We just need to invite him back. Keep an eye on this guy. When he enters the alley, we'll go and invite him. He pulled a large wooden stick from behind him. He had picked it up on the way to the county seat. The man cried and screamed in front of the county office, but it was useless. Magistrate Zhang was already fed up with him. It didn't matter how much he cried and shouted. He didn't flinch and even sent 2 constables to beat him savagely, leaving him covered in bruises. After taking the beating, this guy finally realized that the magistrate had made up his mind. Arthur left the county office and walked a stretch down the main street. At a corner, he ducked into a small alley to take a shortcut home. Unexpectedly, just as he took a few steps into the alley, he saw a young man in front of him holding a large wooden stick. Arthur was terrified and quickly turned around to run back the way he came, but saw a horse blocking him and 3 more young men behind it. Trapped, sweat poured down his forehead. Arthur was scared. He scanned the 4 youths, judged them to be poor thugs, and quickly raised his hands. Don't hit me. I'm on your side. The magistrate is the one desperately collecting taxes. It has nothing to do with me. I've even been trying to persuade him not to collect such heavy taxes. This is what they call a bottomless pit for the people. It turns out there is such a thing. Arthur said quickly, truly, it's precisely because I spoke up for you that the magistrate kicked me out and won't hire me anymore. This is what they call opposing authority. George scratched his head. I don't understand what you're saying, but I feel like you're very learned. Arthur said, yes, I am a man of letters. You cannot be so rude to me. Quickly, put down that stick in your hand. We have things to discuss calmly. This is called releasing pigeons and dissolving horses. George grinned. It's good to be learned. The person we want to invite is exactly a man of letters. Please, come with us to George's village. Arthur said, what place is George's village? I'm not going. I don't want to go. This is called going. With a loud thud, a stick hit the back of his head. Arthur didn't even groan before he hit the ground. The young villager behind him stowed the stick and said, I don't know why, but I just want to hit him when I hear him talk. Those last 4 words he says are too annoying. I don't understand a thing. George just grinned, showing his teeth. Actually, I felt like hitting him too. The 4 of them chuckled. 2 of them hoisted Arthur up. The wealthy stranger's head hung low, completely knocked out. The tax collector's attention snapped right to them. How did this scene look? It looked like the poor were robbing and kidnapping the rich. One tax collector shouted, You 4, what are you doing? George and the others were playing at kidnapping. Seeing the tax collectors, they cringed instantly. They struggled to escape, but strangely, the tax collector looked closely and recognized George, taking him by surprise. You're from George's village. George looked back carefully and recognized the tax collector too. That collector from yesterday had been so terrified that he ran back to town with his tail between his legs, worried about being punished by the heavenly God. He was anxious, his soul barely clinging to his body. Now he doesn't dare leave the city at all. He dragged some colleagues along for courage just to step out onto the street. Behind him were the 4 collectors who were blown over yesterday. They were equally terrified. Now, the 5 walked together just to bolster each other. Unexpectedly, they saw the people from George's village right on the county street. Could the heavenly God have sent them? No, that's not right. Are they here to see if we've leaked what he did? The 5 tax collectors were so scared their faces turned green. George was also quite frightened and stammered. Our friend, he fainted from the sun. We're taking him to the river to wash his face. The 5 tax collectors stammered back. Then please, go right ahead. About yesterday, we haven't said a single word. Both sides trembled slightly at the same time. George's group took off running. Both parties, backs turned, sped away as fast as they could. I watched the scene, stunned, just staring. Another full day passed. When I got hungry, I ordered delivery. And just like that, evening arrived. The setting sun glowed outside the window. The world was covered in the golden glow of sunset. The landscape inside the diorama also transformed into a sunset scene. Obviously, I have fluorescent lamps on in the house. The light from the lamps illuminates the diorama, and it should be able to enter the box through the glass. But in reality, the light doesn't penetrate the scene. The sky inside the box is getting darker and darker. This box has too many strange things about it. I've stopped complaining about small things like the lighting. Now I'm a bit worried about George and the other 3 young villagers who left for the county seat early this morning. They still haven't returned. Could something have happened to them out there? It feels like owning kittens. For naughty kittens ran away from home, and I don't know where they went. As their master, I'm quite worried about whether they'll return safely. Just then, at the edge of my vision, 5 little people suddenly appeared. I perked up. Great, they returned safely. That's right, George and his group were back. Arthur, whom they had knocked out, had already woken up halfway there. Then, the 4 fierce villagers forced him to walk with large wooden clubs. Arthur didn't dare resist, looking at the 4 of them. The 4 villagers huddled secretly, realizing that these 4 were simple-minded people. You can't reason with them. If you talk too much nonsense, they'll probably hit you with a stick. He had to shut up and follow them obediently, walking all the way to George's village. Over 10 miles of road. For Arthur, whose limbs were numb, was really no easy task. On top of not having eaten anything all day, he was already discouraged by the time he reached George's village. He could barely breathe. As soon as he entered, Arthur collapsed on the ground. He had finally arrived. Brave sirs, what do you want me to do here? You can tell me now, right? This was the moment of truth. George told the others, "You 3 watch Arthur. I'll go call the elder." He ran off toward the elder's house. He wanted to use his voice to notify the sky god, but I had already seen him. Why would I need a notification? Outside the elder's house, George shouted, "Elder, elder!" At that moment, the elder had just finished dinner and was mending clothes. His whole body shook, and he jumped up from his broken stool with a thud. He knelt on the floor. "Sky God, what are your orders?" I told him. "George brought someone who seems knowledgeable. Go help me ask him some questions." The elder understood. "I obey your orders, Sky God." "Good, go quickly. George is about to reach your door." The elder stood up and opened the door. Just as he swung it open, George, who was about to knock, had his hand raised as the door creaked inward. George's raised hand froze in midair. "Elder, how did you know?" The elder said, "The great god told me you returned. You also brought a scholar back with you." George looked at the sky with a reverent gaze. The elder ran toward the village entrance as fast as he could. By now, many villagers had heard the news. After all, the village is very small. Some families watched through their windows as night began to fall. They could see what was happening at the entrance. In an instant, everyone came out. All 42 villagers, men, women, young and old, gathered in front of Arthur. At this moment, the sun had almost completely set. The slanted golden sunlight cast shadows of the entire village, stretching them long across the ground. The villagers stood under the setting sun, staring at Arthur in silence. The scene was eerie. Arthur suddenly felt a massive pressure. He was terrified. "I don't want to force you to pay taxes. I swear to heaven, I'm here to speak for you." I advised the elder, Arthur, not to collect taxes. He kicked me out of the office for it. "Truly, I swear. It's really like that. Don't hit me. If you have a complaint, look for Mr. Arthur." This is called clarity in relationships. The villagers part to both sides. Sophie steps out to the front and begins to speak. She is standing in the center position now. The gaze of the 32 villagers naturally falls on her. Arthur is muttering in his heart. What is wrong with this village? In a normal village, it's always a venerable elder who speaks. Why does this village have a young woman? Sophie tilts her ear. She heard my voice from the sky, then said with a serious expression, "Who are you? What is your rank? How many books have you read? How much experience do you have?" Arthur took heart and gave his name again. "Arthur, born on October 2nd. That's why they named me Arthur. I am from the magistrate of Qinshan County, Shaanxi Province. My career was acceptable, but they have already fired me. I have studied hard for 10 years. I have traveled the whole country. That is what it means to have talent." I heard the first part of what this guy was saying. "What year and month is it now?" Sophie took heart and quickly transmitted my words. Hearing her ask, Arthur was stunned and asked, "What year and month? What is the situation with these villagers?" I have heard that peasants in rural areas don't leave their village for years. They are blind to the outside world. That much is true. But what does that mean? Although he was confused, he didn't dare not answer the question. Arthur became serious and said, "It is now the 7th year of Tianqi, the 7th month." That's it, a lack of vocabulary. He couldn't summarize this sentence with an idiom, so he grabbed his head with both hands. He showed a pained expression, as if being unable to summarize a sentence caused him great agony. It was unacceptable. The people, the villagers, felt amused by his ridiculous appearance. It made them laugh and cry, but I didn't laugh. Instead, I froze. Because I, having spent many years on history and military forums, knew the 7th year of Tianqi well. This is a reign name that actually existed in the Ming dynasty. In this year, Emperor Tianqi VII, Zhu Yuxiao, died of illness, and Emperor Chongzhen ascended the throne. Zhuyo Jian ascended the throne. There was a great drought in the country, and the peasant rebellion of Ningmu was about to break out. The Ming dynasty was about to welcome its final 10 years of struggle. What is happening? What I see through the landscape. Is it really an actual historical dynasty? No. Maybe it's just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence in the reign name. I said in a deep voice, Sophie, ask him the emperor's name. Sophie asked quickly. Arthur's expression turned serious when asked for the emperor's name. The current emperor's sacred name. A lowly person like me doesn't dare mention it. This is called obeying the Lord and benefiting the people. Marcus hit him brutally. Sophie, this guy won't say the emperor's name. The heavenly god is very angry. Everyone, take up your weapons and beat him savagely. Sophie was the first to grab a large wooden stick. Other young men also tightened their grip on the sticks in their hands. The villagers began to grab sticks and look for things. Under the setting sun, a large crowd of villagers raised various messy items, like clay pots, bamboo spikes, table legs, and carrying poles. Arthur saw this formation. His face turned black. Without waiting for the villagers to act, he immediately shouted, Zhou Yuxiao, Zhou Yuxiao. The current emperor is named Zhou Yuxiao. At this moment, he didn't care if he was allowed to say the emperor's name. The so-called emperor is far away in the mountains. Imperial power does not reach down to the villages. Right now, he had to save his own life first. He didn't care about taboos. He even forgot he had to weigh every word. His name really is Zhou Yuxiao. My face darkened. I told Sophie to ask him again about the world situation. Sophie quickly asked him. Arthur was so scared by the weapons around him that he didn't know what world situation meant. So he recited the official document he had just seen at the county office. On May 11th, the Jianu army besieged Jinzhou, and the imperial people mobilized troops to support Jinzhou. On May 28th, Jianu divided its troops in the city of Gongmingyuan. Duke Yuan Zhongwan and officer Lu Jingquan, Vice Minister Dong Bisai, quickly ordered the soldiers onto the walls to defend. They camped inside the moat and attacked with cannons. Reciting up to this point, he saw the villagers around him looking confused. They obviously didn't understand, and he felt uneasy, but their weapons didn't lower. Arthur knew he had recited poorly and continued. General Lu led troops to the rescue, fighting a great battle outside the city. Both sides suffered casualties. Manhwa was hit by several arrows. The Jianu army chose to attack Jinzhou with full force. Jinzhou was in danger but could not be taken, so the enemy collapsed and retreated. Reciting this far, he stopped, unable to remember the rest. Sweat poured down his face, thinking he was finished. I can't remember. I don't know if they'll be satisfied. Actually, he had already recited enough. I had heard enough to be sure. It was confirmed. This wasn't some land of tiny people. This was the great Ming dynasty. The end of the Ming dynasty, the most difficult years. No wonder this village is so desolate. The villagers have nothing to eat. This is exactly how the common people lived at the end of the Ming dynasty. Seeing it in history books isn't the same as seeing it in person. It wasn't intuitive before. Only by seeing this village can I truly feel it. This time, I understood everything. It's fine. I won't embarrass him anymore. I've asked everything I wanted to ask. Seeing him captured, looking tired and hungry, I said, give him something to eat. I was no longer in the mood to deal with village affairs. At top speed, I opened my computer and launched the browser. I opened the search engine and looked for information about the end of the Ming dynasty. I dived headfirst into the ocean of history. My last instruction as I left the village was for them to disperse. When my order arrived, the villagers immediately lowered their weapons. They bowed their heads toward the sky, scattered, and returned to their homes. Arthur breathed a sigh of relief, thinking this must be some evil cult organization. Falling into the hands of a cult is a bad omen. I have to play along. Only by surviving can I return home. This is called yielding to survive. He imitated the villagers and bowed his head toward the sky, not knowing which god he was bowing to. Regardless, bowing is the right move to save my life. It's not shameful. Gary told him, come with me. I'll get you something to eat. Arthur was helpful and hurried to follow her. As he walked, he asked, in a low voice, Miss, I see your whole village seems to be worshipping a god. Which god do you pray to? Gary didn't know. Arthur thought, this is the first time I've heard of someone who doesn't even know who they pray to. These villagers are too stupid. Gary said, the great god is just called the great god. He hasn't said his name, and we don't dare ask. We only know he has unlimited magical power. He is kind and benevolent, and takes great care of the people of Gary's village. We all survive because of him. Arthur mocked her internally. Only gullible fools believe in the myths invented by charlatans. I have read the books of the sages and won't be fooled so easily. He was thinking this when he arrived at Gary's house. She pushed open the broken wooden door and told him that there was nothing but broken rice. Sit for a while. I'll go to the kitchen to prepare you something to eat. Arthur looked up to check Gary's house and was dumbfounded. He saw that in the corner of the room was a large pile of white rice. It was truly massive. Each grain was the size of an inkwell. There was also a cabbage leaf leaning against the wall. It wasn't a whole leaf. You could tell by the veins it was only a small piece cut from a cabbage leaf, yet it was as big as an entire wall. Gary picked up a few grains of broken rice and tore off a piece of the enormous cabbage leaf. She put them in a bamboo basket and went into the kitchen. It seemed she was going to use these things to prepare him a meal. My mouth hung open in shock. What is this rice? What is this vegetable? What is this village? Arthur is a typical ancient intellectual. He knows more than the illiterate, so he isn't easily fooled by charlatans, but he still can't completely rid himself of Superstition. While he doesn't believe the nonsense of the White Lotus sect, like the Eternal Mother, he isn't an atheist. He believes gods exist in the world. After standing paralyzed for nearly a minute, he ran to the kitchen door. He shouted to Gary, who was cooking inside, "Which immortal gave you this food?" Gary said she didn't know. Arthur snapped, "You didn't even ask? And you call yourself an envoy? You're hurting the villagers. They don't even know who they're worshipping. When they build a temple, they won't know who to pray to. It's total chaos." Gary realized he was right. Educated people really do consider things carefully. Gary lifted her head. She shouted toward the sky, "Great heavenly God, how should we address your honorable name?" The sky remained quiet and silent. No one answered her. At that moment, I had already gone to read history books, specifically the history of the late Ming dynasty. Reading about the expulsion of the invaders filled me with deep sadness. I couldn't hear the voice of the young girl from the box. Gary told Arthur the great god didn't answer. Arthur sighed. Dawn broke. I looked out with bloodshot eyes, watching the morning light shine through the window. Without realizing it, I had been reading historical materials all night long. I had skimmed the entire history of the expulsion of the invaders. I now had a general understanding of the whole process. There are just many places where the details aren't clear. The history books used many selective editing techniques, and there are many contradictions in them. It's impossible. I double-clicked the mouse to open a file on my desktop, a compilation of key problems I summarized during the night. Problem 1. The dimensions of things thrown into the landscape box increase 200 times in length, width, and height. The volume increases proportionally, and the weight increases too. I can't calculate exactly how much since I'm an art student. Anyway, a 50-gram egg will become hundreds of tons. Using this calculation, it doesn't cost much money to raise one tiny person. There's no problem supporting 42 tiny people. I can give them a good life with great food and drink. But if I want to support millions or tens of millions of tiny people, and if I want to protect their safety, I'll face the embarrassing situation of bankruptcy in reality. So here comes the question, what is my goal? Is it just to save these 42 tiny people, or to do everything possible to save as many citizens of the late Ming dynasty as I can, or even save the whole country? If it's the latter, my financial resources are insufficient, and I need to reconsider my goal. Problem 2. There are wars in the late Ming dynasty, and the tiny people could be in mortal danger at any moment. I also need to eat, sleep, and bathe. Occasionally, I might even go on dates. I can't watch the landscape box 24 hours a day. Maybe when I go out,